Lawyers of Reddit, which fictional villain would you have the easiest time defending? Bucky Barnes Winter Soldier. I think the insanity defense, though it's not called that anymore, would actually apply here. Get a group of certified expert psychiatrists and doctors together, get their testimony depositions, set a competency hearing. In the event he is deemed competent, use witness testimony in the USSR Hydra documentation to prove he wasn't in charge of his actions. Boom. Done. There are actually a ton of great stories about that particular trial on A03. Various ways of defending him as well. I definitely recommend United States v. Barnes, 617F, Sup. 2D 143, DDC, 2015. It's an incredible multimedia piece. Most of the old school Scooby-Doo villains, they didn't really do anything other than scare people off of private property. Most of them are doing so for illegal reasons though, like insurance fraud or tax evasion or whatever. When I was a kid I remember being devastated in the movie Big Daddy when the social worker took Zack and Cody away from Adam Sandler, but after watching it again as an adult, although still sad, I'm thinking yeah of freaking course they're going to take him away from this stranger. So the social worker from Big Daddy is a layup case. Not to mention Sandler's character literally lied to social services so his unemployed, lazy butt could have a child. Dude should have been arrested. In my jurisdiction, I would say Damien from The Omen. Minimum age for delinquency adjudication is 12 and in the first movie he's 5, so he couldn't be tried for any of his evil doings. Dr. Doofenshmirtz. All of his inventions ultimately only end up stealing or damaging the creations of 2 kids, so he could probably be let out with a theft charge. Really, he's just a lonely, unloved man trying to be seen in the world. Good thing he has his therapy platypus. In some cases his inventions could actually benefit society. I'm pretty sure there was one episode where someone took one of his innators and it became a machine used by eye doctors to fix eye problems. Kronk from Emperor's New Groove. He does technically kidnap Kuzco but I think we could get his sentence way reduced. I think he could charm the jury, or completely blow up his own case in the stand. It could be a fun surprise. Your Honor, they shouldn't even have that lever. The Wicked Witch of the West. She was angry at Dorothy, but then again Dorothy dropped a house on her sister and then grave robbed the witch's sister's body with Glinda's help. The shoes were rightfully the witch's anyway, presuming she was her sister's only heir and her sister died intestate. All the witch wanted was for Dorothy to apologize and return the slippers she stole. Everything else that happened was the result of the witch's reasonable attempts to defend herself and her property against Dorothy's killing, theft, and trespass. It would depend on the legal status of Dorothy's companions. I'm pretty sure that you can't attempt to burn someone to death because they are traveling with someone who stole your shoes, even if they are attempting to prevent you from harming the person carrying stolen property. Not a villain, but a scruffy looking scoundrel. Han Solo. Doesn't matter if he shot Greedo first, it was self-defense. At least it would be where I live. Your state's laws may vary. Greedo was the one who pulled a gun on Han. Greedo was abducting Han against his will to take to Jabba, a shot-caller mob boss on Tatooine. While Han had debts to Jabba, owing someone money isn't necessarily a crime. He was a smuggler though. Transporting illegal goods is a crime. Even if they were legal, he was getting them around customs. That's a crime too. Otto Octavius, aka Doc Ock. The neural interface affected his mind. He couldn't do much about it. It was his gallium arm that harmed people, not him. I'm not actually a lawyer but this would be hard to go up against, right? He's on the hook for illegal nuclear research. His office in Manhattan is not suitable for nuclear fusion research. Define easiest time defending. If you define it as I think they have an easy case to win then probably Gaston since hunting a beast that is a threat to members of your town isn't a crime. Remember Beast did lock up Belle's dad and there's no reason to believe that Beast couldn't go evil again during the inevitable divorce. If you mean the one I'm going to most enjoy defending then pick the richest one. It's a criminal client. Write me a check and don't call me every 10 dang minutes from the jail and I'm a happy camper. Plus the whole town was in on the angry mob. Try finding an impartial jury in that small provincial town. I know, but the bad guy attorney in B movie would have killed that case if any actual lawyering occurred. He went to court against a bug and an insane woman. Fictional, but Gaston. The Beast is basically kidnapping people, and you can argue he is violent. Heck, the entire village was on Gaston's side and would acquit him. No one frames like Gaston, dodges claims like Gaston. No one's legal team shifts all the blame like Gaston's. It's kind of scary how little of what went on in the Truman Show would actually be illegal in the real world. There's a few fringe cases, most notably actively preventing Truman from leaving once he realized he was in a fake world and expressed a desire to escape. But pretty much everything up to that point is very legal, and it would be hard to press charges against the director or anyone else for the basic premise of raising a child in a reality show without their knowledge. Seems like a very easy case of invasion of privacy. Probably a handful of other niche torts, maybe unlawful hiring, employment practices, and failing to pay an employee wages. Smorg. He had to have earned squatters' rights be considered an adverse possessor of the property after all that time. And the House of Durin did abandon the property. I think he had a right to defend his home. I don't think squatters' rights matter if you assault the property and drive out the previous owners. Norman Bates. Could not be an easier insanity plea, and if I had to go to trial, I could just find one juror who hated his mother. Probably Palpatine. Republic law doesn't apply because he can bend it. Also, as Supreme Chancellor he probably has immunity. Imperial law doesn't apply either because I assume he is untouchable there. And real world law could also be tricky. All his dirty work was done by his students who are conveniently dead. Good luck proving they did anything on his orders. Being a Sith Lord isn't a crime because freedom of religion. His fight against the Jedi was self-defense, as it was an attack against him with religious motives. Even the killing of Hego Damask would be impossible to prove as there were no witnesses and nobody even know they were on Coruscant together. And the creation of the Empire was approved by the Senate. He didn't even abduct Maul. He was given to him. The most realistic thing would be conspiracy to destroy the Republic or something. But it sounds like a conspiracy theory to claim there was this big Sith rule of two thing going on over centuries. And even if it got to trial somehow, if it is a jury trial, the opposition would have a very hard time. He's probably have qualified immunity. As a lawyer, I can guarantee that a Catwoman would present well to a jury. She can even win over Batman. Catwoman never kills and she's definitely not evil. She mostly commits property crimes and does an occasional good deed. Catwoman also has a tragic and sympathetic backstory, depending which version you read. She suffered from catastrophic head injuries, been forced into, and escaped from, the sex trade as well as a violent pimp. Growing up, Catwoman lost both her parents, including an abusive father, to suicide and alcohol. She was homeless at times and also confined to harsh conditions at an orphanage. Despite her tough circumstances, she would always go to great lengths to protect her younger sister. These days, she's just trying to get by in a cold, cruel world, and exposing corruption in the process. Easy acquittal. Tougher, but maybe possible to get her a medal for civic achievement. She still steals a lot of valuable stuff, multiple grand larcenies, burglaries, and B&Es. Tulkinghorn from Bleak House. Old Man Potter from It's a Wonderful Life. Cruella de Vil. I would never take a case involving Dr. House or Sherlock Holmes though. Good luck having Cruella on the stand and not having the jury turn against you. I feel like Ganondorf would be a nice pick. According to the laws of the Hylian world, he's just, like, supposed to be doing evil stuff all the time. The curse has to be fulfilled throughout generations. There's always a hero, an evil person, and a goddess. It's kinda like a contract. Huh. A theory I like about Ganondorf is that he is as much cursed as Link and Zelda are. A perpetuous cycle of fights between good and evil just because one dude thousands of years ago was P from losing against a 17-year-old. Skyward Sword. The Joker. Your Honor, my client, who is clearly suffering from schizophrenic delusions and various other mental issues, was punched in the face by a billionaire in a rubber gimp suit. And worse, the Gotham City Police Commissioner asked him to do it. Yellow Jacket from Ant-Man. He killed one dude, but there's zero evidence of that. All he did was use his own company's research to try to create a new weapon. Maybe not particularly moral, But he didn't do anything wrong until Lang and Pym stole from him and destroyed his entire office building. After that he did some property damage, but Pym even said that the shrinking tech could affect his mind, so there's a completely reasonable defense that his behavior was affected beyond what he's aware of. Furthermore, since Pym created the tech and knew full well that it could affect the mind and didn't do anything to warn Darren Cross about it, it's really his fault. He was selling weapons to terrorists. Ursula. Basic contract action. Ariel may have been a minor, but that only makes the contract voidable, not invalid. At no point did Ariel ask to void the contract. Instead, her father decided to sign his own contract. King Triton is a sophisticated party who entered into a binding contract. King Triton was the one who was willing to throw his kingdom away to bail out his favorite daughter. Ursula clearly signed that contract in bad faith, given that she personally sabotaged Ariel's attempts to fulfill the contract. Cruella de Vil. She would be an Instagram fashion sensation. She wouldn't need defending now because no one knows the shady behind the scenes of even the biggest fashion companies. What's 101 Dalmatians compared to a few sweatshops? I mean, is she actually a fashion designer though? If she was just some 2-bit Instagram model then she'd get cancelled on the spot. I doubt there would be many people defending someone for trying to skin puppies. Plus, public opinion doesn't matter. Only the opinion of the judge, or depending on the charges, jury, would matter. Agatha Harkness. What did she do that was so wrong? Exactly. The worst I can come up with is that she tried to stop someone with a notoriously out of control, destructive history from continuing to mind rape an entire town of people who were clearly traumatized by it. Honor Chairman. My client Mr. Alduin, firstborn of Akatosh, is innocent. Not only is he innocent, but is in fact himself a victim of the blatant anti-dragon racism of this jury. There is no law against returning to live, neither against dragon necromancy. Rather than being accused of bringing this ancient menace back to Tamriel, my client ought to be celebrated as the talented medical professional he is, managing to give back their lives to dozens of hard-working dragons and their families. When in Helgen, my client did not burn a town and slaughter its people but attempted to interrupt the illegal execution of one Ulfric Stormcloak who was to be executed without a proper trial. He is justified in this by the right to help in distress from 32 STGB, yes this is a German trial, when violently attacked by the so-called Dragonborn. The name itself being an attempt to mock my client while performing life-giving surgery in the town of Kynus Grove. My client even sought to avoid the confrontation and flew away. Then again he was brutally attacked when visiting a relative at his domicile in the throat of the world. This time the attacker known as Dragonborn even used what is commonly known as dragon shouting, a blatant infringement of my client's intellectual property. This time my client was forced to use self-defense to avoid being murdered by this copyright infringing lunatic. The defense would like to withdraw the description of lunatic, and still my client chose to withdraw. This demonstrates how much my client detests physical violence and is a mere victim. Then my client returned to his private domicile in the lovely town of Sovngarde. Here the prosecution falsely alleges that my client consumed the souls of the hallowed dead using a soulsoner. I would suggest the prosecution go back looks in their law books for once and spares us this charade. There is no legal concept of the soul, which in turn means it cannot be legally protected. This could at most be considered disturbing the resting of the dead of an 68 ST.GB, but then again this only protects the physical remains of the dead, which are to be treated separately from their souls. Again my client was attacked but luckily survived when the attacker known as Dragonborn ate 154 wheels of cheese mid-combat of his own volition and died of a heart attack. Thank you, Chairman. The defense rests. Finally, a question that applies to me. See username for 11 plus years. Gustavo Fring from Breaking Bad. Lot of good character evidence with his work in the community. Plenty of resources to mount a proper defense. Lot of underlings for obfuscation and distance between the drugs. Despite being a monster, I also suspect Gustavo would be a more methodical client who understood the realities of a complex criminal case. I wouldn't have to deal with extreme emotional swings or mental health episodes. He would be consistently focused like the businessman that he is. The machines in the Matrix. While ultimately Agent Smith is the ultimate villain and something different from the machines, The machines are definitely made to be the antagonist against humanity, but the fact is the machines actually saved humanity and put a large amount of effort into preserving them. And not just preserving them but trying to actually give them decent lives. The humans in the history of the Matrix literally blacked out the skies in an effort to commit genocide against the machines and in turn dooming themselves. From the machines' perspective, humanity was a dangerous species that needed to be controlled and contained. But they also had enough reverence for their creators to want to preserve them and keep them as happy as they could be. Remember, the architect says that the first Matrix was a literal paradise, but too many humans rejected it. They weren't just trying to enslave us. There was this sense of compassion to it. And yes, they use people as batteries. But it isn't like the machines couldn't just do nuclear power, leave the planet completely and use solar power, wind energy, geothermal energy. They had tons of choices, but instead put effort into keeping humans alive instead. You also meet various programs that have legit respect for human philosophy and are compassionate towards humans. The humans in the Matrix are like the child throwing a tantrum against the parents trying to protect them. Paul, played by Rob Lowe, from Tommy Boy. At the end of the movie it's stated he's facing charges for computer fraud. Hard to believe the state could ever produce evidence to convict him beyond a reasonable doubt, especially given early 90s computer technology. That said, I'd hate to defend the guy that tried to bring down Callahan Auto. Itachi Uchiha, was a child soldier ordered to spy on his own clan. He saw firsthand during the Third Great Ninja War, the devastation war had on his village. That made him a pacifist early on, and this is something the Leaf Village elders exploited when they caught wind of the planned coup by the Uchiha clan. If a civil war broke out in the Leaf, it would allow other villages to attack, starting the Fourth Great Ninja War. So the elder ordered Itachi to kill his clan. He was only 13 years old when he executed the order. I'm having trouble with some of these, like Smaug or Palpatine or the Wicked Witch of the West. What legal system is claiming jurisdiction over these folks? What statutes govern the locations of their supposed crimes? Because Dorothy was a US citizen, they would have the Wicked Witch of the West extradited from Oz to the US to face trial there. But I would imagine Michael the trolley boy from Hot Fuzz would be a simple defense, since he has a child's mind, raised in a home by his mother sister, and was being manipulated by town authority figures, including his boss. Milton Wadhams from Office Space. Somebody keeps taking his stapler. He was told he could listen to his radio at a reasonable volume from 9 to 11. The slices were much too large and he clearly got skipped over for birthday cake. They started storing boxes in his cubicle. They moved his desk to the basement. They stopped sending his checks and payroll gave him the runaround. He warned them that he could set the whole place on fire, but nobody listened. He said no salt on the margarita. Hans from Frozen. I'm not a lawyer, but he basically wanted to legally become ruler of a kingdom through marriage. You could make a credible case that Elsa was a threat to the kingdom, and that she was unfit to rule since she accidentally harmed her own sister. Hans going after her was an effort to protect the kingdom. He even stopped a henchman from shooting her in the chest, so he was clearly trying to use the least amount of violence necessary. Not a lawyer, but Sauron. He was simply trying to get a treasure that was stolen from him while employing orcs, whom the rest of the races are very racist towards. Once the One Ring left the borders of Mordor, he'd have to follow the rules and laws of whichever country he was attempting to reacquire the ring from. Francis from Deadpool, who does human testing on Wade Wilson and turns him into a mutant. Technically he signed up for it, so it wasn't really Francis's fault. Also not a lawyer. This is the first time I've read every comment in a sub. Great question, OP. The evil stepmother from Cinderella. The worst thing she did was make Cinderella work a lot, but if she's old enough to marry, then she's old enough to help around the house. She ordered her daughters to tear up her dress while it was on her, which is considered assault. It's also implied she killed Cinderella's father, not to mention trying to hide evidence from royal, and violating a royal decree by trying to prevent Cinderella from going. She could have been arrested for that last one alone. Gus Fring, because he would absolutely have his alibis and defense plans schemed down to the most minute detail. All he would need would be an earnest and detail-oriented storyteller, and I can do that. This is a good answer. I don't think Gus would leave much of a trail. and we saw him construct some pretty plausible bulls after Gale was shot. I'm not encouraging perjury. The man would be able to create reasonable doubt in any jury. Ed Rooney from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. He's just trying to do his job. I would not want to defend the actor who played him, of course. Also, basically every evil rich land developer. It's a Wonderful Life, Caddyshack, batteries not included, the Vogons from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The law already protects those guys. It'd be like shooting fish in a barrel. Breaking into a student's home is beyond the scope of an educator. Ian'll, but I have to imagine all of the Scooby-Doo villains would be easy to defend. Most of them are just dudes hanging around on property they own dressed in costumes scaring people who are trespassing. Not a lawyer, but Umbridge from Harry Potter, because she never committed a single crime. In fact, she changed rules and laws specifically so she could do what she did. The worst action she committed was making Harry write with a quill that scarred him. However, we know from Filch that capital, I meant corporal, punishment within schools is still allowed in the wizarding world, and the only reason it doesn't continue at Hogwarts is because Dumbledore doesn't allow it. With Dumbledore gone, the headmistress is well within her rights to bring back the practice. Any WandaVision viewing lawyers around? What did Hayward even get arrested over? Seemed like he did his director of a government defense agency job. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.